the master, the bowing of I and you. Hopefully not to each other, right? The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, translated by James Haughton Woods. Book 4, 8. Ka if alya is the word for isolation. Anyways, 8. As a result of this, there follows the manifestation of those subconscious impressions only which correspond to the fruition of their karma. As a result of this means the three kinds of karma, the words of those only which correspond to the fruition of their karma means that those subconscious impressions which correspond to the fruition of that karma, which is comparative with them, dwell upon the fruition of karma. The manifestation of these only follows, for when karma of the entities is in fruition, it is not the efficient cause for the manifestation of hellish, or of brutish, or of human subconscious impressions. It does, however, make manifest those subconscious impressions only which correspond to it, and the reasoning is the same with regard to hellish, or brutish, or human subconscious impressions. Having discussed in detail the latent deposit of karma, he tells what the outcome of the latent deposit of the hindrances will be. Because karma isn't necessarily a negative thing, and hindrances is something different, right? 8. As a result of this, there flows the manifestation of those subconscious impressions, only which correspond to the fruition of theirs. The subconscious impressions, dhyana takes in place of the Vara Pranidhana. Okay. The subconscious impressions correspond to a particular function of karma, whether supernal or hellish birth, or length of life, or kind of experience, which belongs to a particular class, whether it be the class of merit or the class of demerit. These same subconscious impressions are described in the words subconscious impressions, which dwell upon the fruition of karma. They dwell upon or imitate, for the subconscious impressions which correspond to the fruition of the supernal karma are generated by supernal enjoyments, and therefore subconscious impressions correspond to their own fruition and are to be manifested by their own karma. This is the meaning of the comment. 9. There is an uninterrupted causal relation of the subconscious impressions, although remote in species and point of space and moment of time by reason of the correspondence between memory and subliminal impressions. Although 100 species are a distance in points of space, or 100 mundane points intervene, if there is a manifestation of the phenomenal form by the operation of the conditions which phenomenalize vyanjaka, a given thing, sva, namely, that from which the fruition which results in a birth, as a cat rises into consciousness. Well, I guess a cat would be. And if again, just that phenomenal form, by the operation of the conditions which phenomenalize that given thing should arise into consciousness, it would, in an instant, be phenomenalized in association with the subconscious impressions, subliminally extent of the fruition which results in the birth as cat, and which can be experienced in former time. Why is this? Because although those subconscious impressions are remote, the karma which produces the same result becomes their manifester, and that is efficient cause. And so there is an uninterrupted causal relation. And wherefore is this? The answer is by reason of the correspondence between memory and subliminal impressions, because subliminal impressions are like experiences, and the latter correspond with the subconscious impressions of karma. And because memory is like subconscious impressions, therefore memory arises from subliminal impressions, although species and points of time and moments of time intervene, and again subliminal impressions arise from memory. That is, that memory and subliminal impressions are phenomenalized by virtue of the fact that the latent deposits of karma assume a fluctuation of mind stuff, and consequently the uninterrupted succession of subconscious impressions, although there be interventions, is proved from the fact that the relation of the determination to the determined is not cut through. An objector says, this may be true, but in the case of a man who immediately after his death passed into an existence as a cat, one would expect a manifestation of human subconscious impressions, and that these came immediately before. For it cannot be that one should not remember what was experienced on the day immediately preceding, but should remember that which is experienced in the days before the intervention. In reply to this, he says, there is an uninterrupted relation, although remote in species and point of space and moment of time, by reason of the correspondence between memory and subliminal impressions. So, this, well, you don't remember anything, there's no real sign, it's just something you accept on, well, if we're talking causal relations, oh, well, you can't see it. No, all other causal relations you can interpret without this reincarnation thing. And I haven't heard of a single case that isn't explainable in terms of this life. And I've seen a lot of cases, as you can tell from my bookshelf and books I've read about reincarnation, that sort of thing. Although the subconscious impression of the cat passes through the intervening births and so on, there is an uninterrupted succession of the subconscious impression with respect to its fruit. For in consequence of the karma, the fruition of which was birth as a cat, that particular subconscious impression which corresponds to the fruition would become manifest, and the memory of that subconscious impression would be produced, as he says, the rise into consciousness of the fruition, which results in a birth as a cat. The rise into consciousness means that from which something rises into consciousness. That is the latent deposit of karma. The words, and if again, just that phenomenal form, by the operation of the conditions which phenomenalize that given thing should arise into consciousness, would mean that it would be manifested. That is, it would be brought near to the beginning of its fruition. That is the meaning. Subliminally existent means activities of certain impressions. In association with, it would be phenomenalized after having ceased. The meaning is that if it is to be phenomenalized, it will be phenomenalized only after having ceased the subliminal impressions which correspond to its own fruition. Having explained that the result is immediate succession with respect to the cause, he now explains the same with respect to the effect memory in the words, and wherefore is this memory? There is similarity since both memory and impression correspond. The same thing he says by the word like. It is objected, if the subliminal impressions are of the nature of the experience, then in that case, since experiences are transitory, so also should the subliminal impressions be transitory. How can they be capable of producing an experience capable of lasting a long time? In reply to this, he says, and the latter correspond with the subconscious impressions of karma. Cause, effect, action, what is done. Just as the invisible influence, apurva, of the sacrifice is stable, although caused by momentary sacrifice, karma, so a subliminal impression is stable, although caused by momentary experience. Similarity is based upon some kind of difference. Otherwise, if there were an identity in essence, similarity would be impossible. The rest is easy. Think of how people are called, whether an insult or as a compliment, as an animal of one sort or another, a particular character or kind of put into a cat, this type of animal, and so when we look at all these people being turned into animals, it's like, well, we can look at the metaphorical value of that, or we can look at the different births of, well, I was a dog, and I was a goat, and I was a chimpanzee, and it's like, but you were never a chimpanzee. You were just a human. So you're different stages of development, right? Anyways, 10. Of course, if you want to believe in reincarnation, that sort of thing is 10. Furthermore, these subconscious impressions have no beginning that we can set in time, since desire is permanent. These subconscious impressions, because of the permanence of desire, have no beginning. This well-known desire, Book 2, 9, for oneself, may I not cease to be. May I be, which is found in everyone, is not self-caused. Why not? The answer is, how could the fear of death, determined by the recollection of hatred and of pain, arise in the animal? Juntu, just brought into life in the condition wherein death has never been experienced. Furthermore, a self-caused thing does not need an efficient cause. It is for these reasons that this mind stuff, commingled with subconscious impressions which have no beginning, by the efficient cause, lays hold of a certain subconscious impressions, and presents itself for the experience of the self. Others have come to the conclusion that, like the light of a lamp, which is contracted, if in a jar, and diffused, if in a place, the mind stuff has such a form as corresponds to the dimensions of the body, and thus they say that there is an intermediate state, and there is a ground for the round of rebirths. It is only this all-pervasive mind stuff's fluctuation which contracts and expands. So the master says, this mind stuff furthermore requires such efficient causes as right living. And this efficient cause is of two kinds, that which is external and that which has to do with the self. The external requires the body and the other means, such as the praises and almsgiving and salutations. That which, like belief, for instance, has to do with self and is subject with the mind stuff only. And in this sense, it has been said, as for friendliness and such exalted states of mind, they are the diversions of contemplative yogins. They are, in their essence, unaided by outer means. They bring right living to perfection. So your relation with others isn't for itself, it's part of the greater relation, right? Of these two, the inner and outer means, and that of the central organ is the stronger. I notice I'm starting to slouch more. I need to get my back worked on or lay on that machine for a while. How is this? The answer is that intuitive knowledge and passionlessness are unsurpassed by any other force, who by bodily action and without the force of mind stuff could empty the Dandaka forest of people, are like the Agastya, drink up the sea. An objector says, this may be true, but subconscious impressions, subliminally impressed in the previous or in a preceding birth, might become phenomenalized, provided there be any source of valid ideas to prove the existence of a previous or a preceding birth. But this is just what there is not, and it should not be said that the mere expression of joy or of grief in an animal just born is the source of the valid idea to prove the existence of the previous birth, for this may be explained by saying that it is self-caused, like the contraction and expansion of the lotus. We can think of the top chakra as the lotus, but in reply to this, he says, 10. Furthermore, these have no beginning, since desire is permanent. Yeah, people trying to, oh, well, you must not have desires until you're married. Even if you're saying, well, at a later time you're going to have desires. Well, you're going to have desires. Don't pretend that desire ever stops. It's what you believe and what you do that matters. What experience you make it at. Don't let your desires torment yours. The beginninglessness of these subconscious impressions, furthermore, not their mere uninterrupted causal relation, is meant by the word furthermore, And this is because desire is permanent, since desire for oneself never loses its permanent character, for the reason that the subconscious impressions have no assignable beginning. And if it be objected that the permanent character of a desire is unproven, inasmuch as it could be explained as being self-caused, the reply is, in this well-known desire, a heterodox person asks, why not? The answer is an animal just brought into life, and therefore in a condition whether death has not been experienced in this birth. In other words, he who has not experienced the condition which is death, and the round of rebirths can be said to be either in the hell realms that you're kind of, a bad afterlife, or in this life that you die to parts of you that shouldn't be, or maybe that they should be, so you die in different ways. How can there be in the child, fallen forward from its mother's lap, and trembling in consequence, a fear of death due to the memory of pain associated with aversion, as it is inferred from the particular quivering of the child as it clasps very tightly in its hand the thread marked with the disc and other auspicious objects which hang around its mother's neck? And if again it is urged that this is self-caused, the reply is, furthermore not. Furthermore, a self-caused thing does not need, that is, take an efficient cause in order that it itself should come into existence. What he means to say is this: the tremor that is seen in the little child is grounded in fear, because it is a tremor of a particular kind, just like our own, and the fear of a child is based on the memory of pain and aversion, because it is a fear like any one of our own fears. Again, we can explain this otherwise, that instinct doesn't require, because, if the first animal of any size had instinct, then it can't be a past life memory. And so the fear, which is characterized by an expectancy of something disagreeable to come, does not arise from the mere memory of pain, but having inferred that thing of which he is afraid is the cause of something disagreeable. The child now also is afraid of something disagreeable. And we see in the emotional realm the ruler name in my New Age playlist. You got Niranjan, either Jot or Call Niranjan. And Niranjan means without fear, without blemish, and they kind of go together. And Jot being highest, Cal meaning time, other things, tension, whatever. So as a result of the memory of that kind of pain, accompanied by aversion for that kind of cause of fear which has been previously experienced, when that kind of cause is fear is now experienced, he, the child, inferring that it would cause pain, is afraid of it, and the child has not come to the conclusion at any other time in this birth that falling is the cause of pain, and he has not experienced that kind of pain, so that the only alternative that remains is an experience relating to the previous births. All this can be logically formulated thus: the memory of belonging to a child just born is based on a previous experience. Because it is a memory, just like our own, nor can it be said that the expansion and contraction of this lotus is self-caused. For what is self-caused cannot stand the need of another cause, because if this were so, even the heat of the fire would require another cause. Therefore, what leads to the expansion of the lotus is merely an accidental cause, such as, for instance, contact with the rays of the early sun, and the cause of its closing is the subliminal impression which leads it to recover its original position. Similarly, from laughter and other physical acts, we must infer joy and grief in some previous life to be the cause of the acts of the child. Now let the topic rest. He brings the discussion to a close by saying it is for these reasons. By words of efficient cause, he means that the karma has reached the time for its fruition, laying hold of means of manifestation or laying hold of means manifestation. Incidentally, with the intent to do away with the diversity of opinions concerning the dimensions of the mind stuff, he first of all describes the diversity in the words a water jar, a palace. The Samkhya view, since we see works performed only when the mind stuff functions within the limits of the body, there is no means of proving that mind stuff exists outside the body, nor is it of the dimensions of an atom, for then it would follow that, at the time of eating and handling a long corn cake, the fivefold sensation by the organs simultaneously could not be produced, and there is no means of proof for the assumption of a consequence. The consequence is when, not actually in experience. Furthermore, one atomic central organ cannot simultaneously come into contact with organs located in several regions of the body. The only remaining alternative for the Samkhya is that the mind stuff is of the dimension of the body, and in the body of an ant or of an elephant. As the case may be, it is liable to expansion or contraction, like a lamp placed in a small water jar or in a large palace. So we see the consciousness in terms of the body and not just the thing. That's why we have 7 chakras or other systems that have more or less. 5 is a particular Tibetan one that we look at. There's a cake made of kernels and ghee and oil and spices for Diwali. Okay, water jar, or a large palace. So it is that others have come to the conclusion that the form of the mind stuff is the dimension of the body itself. It is that of which the dimension is the body. The Samkhya objector continues, if the atomic theory were true, Jvam, how can this mind stuff come into relation with the womb, the Setra, or the seed? For surely without something in which it resides, Shreya, this mind stuff cannot from the dead body enter into the blood, and seed resident in the body of the mother and the father, since the mind stuff is dependent. For certainly when post and such things do not move, their shadows do not move, nor when the canvas is not moving, does the picture which rests upon the Achraya it move. And further, according to this theory, the round of rebirth would be impossible. Therefore, he says, and thus they say, there is an intermediate state, and there is ground for the round of rebirths. The words and thus mean when the mind stuff is of the dimension of the body, there is, in order to get into another body, both of the leaving of the first body and the getting into of the other body by means of a correlation, while on the way, antara, with a migratory body. For of course, by this correlation, he would pass into another body, as the Purana passage also says, Yama, by force, drew forth a man the size of a thumb. This is what is meant by saying that there is an intermediate state, and that consequently there would be ground for the round of rebirths. Not tolerating this opinion, he gives his own by saying the fluctuation. It is only the all-pervasive mind stuff's fluctuation which contracts and expands, so the master and self-born is set forth. His point in rejecting the other theory is this: if the mind stuff without something in which it resides cannot get into a body, how does it, in the first place, find the something in which it resides in the migratory body? And if we imagine another body in this case, that would involve an infinite regress. Just like ancient alien theory. The aliens did it. And aliens did it to the aliens. And aliens did it to the aliens. Well, where did the aliens come from? Shh. That's like religious talk. Aliens. Further, it is not possible that this migratory body be drawn forth from the body, since it is only when drawn forth that the mind stuff can come into correlation with the migratory body. Now, I'm not negating the possibility that there's intelligent life out there that's corporeal. Furthermore, it's not possible that this migratory body be drawn forth from the body, since when it's drawn forth, the mind stuff can come in correlation with its migratory body. Therefore let there be a subtle body from the moment of creation and up to the time of the great mundane dissolution. It would be limited in its function to the six-sheathed body, which would be the locus of the mind stuffs. For so the mind stuff could pass about in one body after another in the truth world, down to avicii, and one could explain the drawing forth of the subtle body from the six-sheathed body. For in this cause there is no difficulty as to an intermediate state of the subtle body, because this subtle body is always necessarily there. Moreover, there is no means of proof for the existence of this subtle body. Also, indeed, it is not within the range of the ocular demonstration, nor can the round of rebirths by the means of inference for this subtle body. For the round of rebirths can be explained quite as well by the theory of the master, while too, as for the tradition agama, it speaks of drawing out a man, Purusa, and a man is neither mind stuff nor subtle body, but the energy of intellect, which unites not with objects. And since a drawing out of this energy of intellect is impossible, we must understand the quotation as being merely metaphorical. And so the explanation of the metaphor is that the meaning of the drawing out is only the non-existence of a fluctuation belonging to both the intellect and to the mind stuff with reference to this object or that. As to what has been said in the Smrti, are in the Itihasa, are in Puranas with regard to the mind stuff, just as death after death getting into the body of a preta, and that through the agency of the commemorative feasts, Sapindikarana, and so on, the mind stuff is liberated from this body. All this we accede to, but what we cannot tolerate is that the mind stuff should be migratory, and there is no tradition to support your theory. For the messengers of Yama, Yamadutas take those that didn't do as well. The Vishnu Dutas take those who did better. Actually, there's not the division in some. It's the same angels of death, and they put the people one in the other places. Depends on what you're looking at. There's no Hindu religion per se, and it's just 70,000 different groups and various texts. And carry him bound with fetters only as having a body in general, but it is not said that there is a migratory body. Hence, since mind is an effect of the personality substance, and since the personality substance, like the sphere of the atmosphere, pervades the three worlds, the central organ is also all-pervasive. See, the idea of reincarnation is like an insert into the story. Oh, well, you're taken after death, but it doesn't mean you're taken and put into another body after death. But they put, oh, well, there's a body. And then the next stage is, oh, where does the body go? An objector says, if this be so, the fluctuation of the mind stuff would also be all-pervasive, and there would be a universal omniscience. The reply to this is only this fluctuation. The objector replies, this may be true, but how has this fluctuation, which depends on mind stuff only, its contraction and expansion from time to time? In reply to this, he says, this mind stuff, furthermore, and this mind stuff, or its fluctuation, requires some such efficient cause as right living. He classifies this efficient cause by saying, and this efficient cause, by the words such as, we are to understand energy and wealth and the like. By the words like belief, for instance, we are to understand energy and mindfulness and such qualities. Book 1, 20. As to their being internal means, he adduces the consensus of the teachers by saying, and in this sense, it has been said, diversion is a functional activity. Perfection means whiteness. Of these two means among the inner and the outer. Intuitive knowledge and passionlessness means the qualities engendered by them. By what quality of outer means of attainment are these outer means surpassed, are overwhelmed? It is the qualities resulting from intuitive knowledge and passionlessness which overcomes it, in that they remove it from the condition of seed. That is the meaning. Oh, this is the meaning. On this point, he gives a well-known illustration in the words, the Dandaka forest. 11. Since the subconscious impressions are associated with cause, motive, and mental substrate, achraya, and stimulus, if these cease to be, I think at some point I said cease instead of seize. But this is cease. Then those subconscious impressions cease to be. And to cause, from right living results pleasure, from wrong living pain, from pleasure passion, from pain aversion, and from this struggle. Jihad, right? Well, different kind of struggle. Bad struggle, not, you're trying to get something done, whether or not it's difficult. When it's difficult. Quivering in central organ or in vocal organ or in body with this struggle, he either helps or injures another. From this again result right living and wrong living, pleasure and pain, passion and aversion. The Epicurean point of view, right? This thus revolves the six-spoked wheel of the round of births, and it is ceasingly, and as it ceaselessly revolves, the differentiated consciousness, avidya, the undifferentiated consciousness, part of the page was in the shadow, avidya, the root of all the hindrances, its motive power. Such is cause, but motive is that human purpose with reference to that which any condition, yasya, such as right living, becomes operative in the present, for it is not the cause of anything new. The central organ, however, while its task is yet unfulfilled, is the mental substrate of conscious impressions. For when the task of the central organ is fulfilled, the subconscious impressions, now without mental substrate, are not able to persist. When a thing confronted with some object phenomenalizes any subconscious impression in itself, then that object is the stimulus of that subconscious impression. Thus all subconscious impressions are associated with these causes and motives and mental substrates and stimuli. And if they cease to be, the subconscious impressions cohering with them also ceases to be. And there's going to be a question.